Welcome back to Rattlesnake TV, guys. Today I'm going to be breaking down a debate between rapper, social and political commentator, Oxford graduate, and the man that broke the women's deadlifting record whilst identifying as a woman. Of course, I'm talking about Zuby, and model, actress, and BLM activist Iman Ayton. Why are they always models and actresses? Anyway, let's get into the clips.
Yeah.
That is coming out. It's been coming here from people as well, that somehow this is all about racism and white supremacy. It's not. It's about 5 poorly trained, thuggish black police officers killing a black man who did nothing to deserve it. That's it.
Okay, so I just have to start with saying that video was absolutely disgusting. One of the worst videos I've ever seen in my entire life.
And it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it was disgusting. There was 2 versions of it: the body footage, and of course the pole from across the road. Absolutely disgusting. So I'm absolutely horrified at the fact that, of course, it was 5 black people. But for me personally, this is about an abuse of power and a disregard of human life, and those individuals need to be accountable for their actions. That I need to.
Don't disagree. What's it got to do with racism and white supremacy?
So people
Why are white people responsible for this?
Okay, so people could also argue that this is due to internalized racism, which is a byproduct of societal or institutional racism, also referred to as white supremacy.
So black police officers become white supremacist racists who kill black people because they work in an atmosphere of white supremacy. Is that it?
I can explain it a little bit better. Okay, so anti-blackness is baked into society here and in the US, and black people are not impervious to that. And so what people fail to realise...
So black people are anti-black?
Yep, this exactly. So let me explain it. I know it's very confusing. Nonsense. So let me explain it. Let me explain it, Piers. So what people fail to realise is that when black people have to contend with racism, they can end up internalising it. And that can result in low self-esteem, self-loathing, and rejection of one's community. And when you combine those feelings, which, as we know, are also referred to as unconscious bias, when you have those feelings and they are compounded by hierarchy and power, it can lead to an individual abusing said power and projecting their self-hate onto another. And this is why, in my opinion, why we see black and white police officers killing more black people than we do white. Reason why is because of racism, which includes internalised racism, Piers.
Right. I think that's complete nonsense.
You would, because you're a white man and you don't understand.
Exactly, I'm white, therefore my skin colour means I have...
Because you don't have the lived experience.
My skin colour means I have nothing to do with it.
Okay, guys, I'm not going to insult your intelligence here and explain to you why 5 black police officers killing a black man has nothing to do with racism. I think you guys have got that one covered. But what I think is more interesting and relevant here is a little bit of research that I've done about Iman. Now, obviously, I disagree with her vehemently about what she says throughout this clip, but there is something that I really respect about her. Whilst I think she's obviously very ideologically misguided, she also had the courage to stand up against the corruption of the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'll explain to you how. Iman actually had a falling out with the Black Lives Matter UK movement after the 2020 George Floyd protests. It reads as follows: I received a lot of heat because I wanted it to be known that all these people who had contributed over £1 million had contributed to an organisation that didn't actually organise the protests, she says. According to Iman, people weren't ready to hear anything bad being said about the organisation that had detracted over £1 million in fundraising as people showed solidarity and support for black equality. You see my face leading 20,000 people on a BLM-inspired protest, and then I stand up and say they're Marxists, they're far left. People at the time weren't ready to hear what I had to say. It goes on to say that the actor maintains that after organising a peaceful protest in Hyde Park on June the 20th, during which she called for a meeting with Boris Johnson and the implementation of reviews, including the 2017 Lammy Review, which looks into the treatment of black, Asian, and minority ethnic BAME people in the criminal justice system. She was the subject of social media posts put out by BLM UK to their 70,000 followers criticising the protest. Quote, they saw people were listening to me and I was saying the opposite to what they wanted. So that's when they wanted to shut me down. And now let's have a look at the post that BLM UK put out about her. We do not believe in leaders, and none of us claim to be the figurehead of what is meant to be an inclusive, non-hierarchical, and grassroots movement. Self-appointed, quote, leaders, unquote, who work with or for the police and state are not here for the furthering of black liberation, just opportunism, and to depoliticize the movement. Be mindful, not all skinfolk are kinfolk. We are an abolitionist movement. We do not believe in reforming the police, the state, or the prison industrial complex. It is a direct contradiction to BLM for events to be held promoting reform and subduing valid criticisms of the police, the government, and Boris Johnson. And when events are meant to be those heavily affected by police violence like LGBTQIA+ black community, this is especially disrespectful. You see, what we're dealing with here is a fantastic microcosmic representation of the massive problem with the Black Lives Matter movement. These people are essentially Marxists, and they use the Black Lives Matter movement as a Trojan horse to get their sinister Marxist agenda through the gates of Troy. So the reason why I respect Iman is because she actually wanted to have a meeting with the Prime Minister. She wanted to effect change within the system that already exists. And that is exactly what you should be doing. If you want to effect change, then you have to do it within the parameters of the democratic process. Try and get the attention of your leaders. The organizers, who tried to shut her down, however, they want to see everything burn to the ground. They don't have any better ideas, they just want to see everything burn because these people are fundamentally fueled by resentment. If you want to have a conversation about economic disparities between ethnic communities, sure, that's a reasonable conversation to want to have. What can be done? Let's have a look at education. Let's have a look at culture. Let's have a look at government policies that have been there to help, that have actually crippled your community. Let's have an honest discussion about what will actually help. If you want to have a discussion about the legacy of slavery, that is a very reasonable discussion to want to have. However, we're not going to be placing any class guilt. No. What can we do now? What is actually going to help?
I mean, no disrespect.
All right, well, let me go to a black man and see if he's allowed to have a view. Zuby, what's your view?
Okay, so I agree with the first half of everything that was said there. I agree that the video was disgusting. I agree that this is an issue of training, and I agree that this is an issue of the human heart. I think that any attempt to put the blame on this in any way, shape, or form on racism or white supremacy or white people in general is absolutely ridiculous. I also think it's pretty degrading because this sort of idea stems from the notion that black people, black men, black women, that we do not have full agency and responsibility and therefore accountability for our actions and our words. We end up in these ridiculous situations where no matter the permutation, no matter what happens, even if there's not a single white person involved in the situation, in the Memphis police force, even the police chief is a black woman. The large percentage of the force is black, and people are still trying to lean on this white supremacy is the answer and the reason for everything. And honestly, it's lame. And as someone who's lived my entire life as a black male, certainly I've never been possessed by this sort of phantom of white supremacy that's made me want to attack anybody, let alone another black person. And I think that we need to put the blame and responsibility squarely on the individuals who were involved in this.
I completely agree.
It's tragic that this young man died.
I completely agree with Zuby there. And if you guys haven't seen Zuby debate before, the man is an ice cold killer. Never ever gets out of second gear. He's got a great debating style. And the thing that this really highlights for me is the fact that if this is the big racism story, 5 black police officers killing a black man, if this is the thing that the left are jumping on, there is a serious supply and demand problem here. Because you've got so many activists out there just waiting to sink their teeth into the next case of white supremacy where they can go and start burning a building down. But it's just not happening for them. So they latch onto this. It's quite astounding.
I completely agree. I mean, just to note some statistics about the Memphis Police Department, that 65% of Memphis population is black. 58% of the entire police force in Memphis is black. The police chief was a black woman, right? And so on and so on. So you take all that in totality, you think, well, okay, well, where is this institutionalized white supremacy coming from, given the institution is actually served predominantly by black people for a population that is predominantly black as well? So I don't get that point. The second point I make is this. I think there's a wider issue here. The demonization of the police in America, calling them all a bunch of vile racists, has led to many older, experienced, good police officers who are not vile racists quitting the force all over the country. And as a result, in Memphis, for example, they had a massive reduction, 20% between 2011 and 2017 of police officers. 20% went from the force. And so to try and restore the numbers, they made it easier to become a police officer. They reduced the restrictions, reduced the qualifications. 2 of the 5 officers involved in killing this poor young man went through that process in that period of not being required to have the same sort of qualifications that they used to join the Memphis Police Department. So you have a bunch of people being brought in who are poorly trained, who are not qualified to do the job, who end up committing this kind of crime. That has nothing to do with racism and white supremacy. That has everything to do, I think, with perhaps an over-demonized force in general, with a lot of bad apples in it, but over-demonized force leading to many people quitting and being replaced with people just not up to the job.
A great point by Piers Morgan there, and I give Piers Morgan a lot of shit on this channel. But I'm starting to change my mind about him a little bit. Recently, he's been really on the ball. I mean, he was an absolute Karen about COVID, and he's been tragic on a few other issues. But recently with his new show, I got to give the guy props. I feel like he's really coming into his own, but maybe I'm wrong. Keen to hear what you guys think about him.
For people just not up to the job.
I think it's, well, everything that you said I don't disagree with. I think it's not about conflating the two things. It's just about presenting a different perspective, an alternative perspective that should be considered, because internal racism is a real thing, so therefore it should be considered.
You just heard a black man, in a very considered way, say that basically you're talking nonsense.
No, so
the idea that you
so
can
I'll ask that. So Zuby, do you believe that internal racism is nonsense? Do you believe that black people cannot internalise racism? Do you believe that?
I don't believe that it's completely impossible.
Okay.
I don't think it's impossible for
you heard that, right?
I don't think it's impossible for a person of any race or ethnicity to harbor hatred or animosity towards people who may look like them or share some things in common. What I completely disagree with is the idea that in every single one of these situations, that no matter what happens, we just jump to white supremacy is the problem. We've seen this happen many, many times.
And I agree with you.
And I think one of the biggest issues with it is, I think one of the biggest issues as well is it's actually a distraction from a very important conversation, which Piers was leaning into there, which is that when it comes to the police in the USA and also in other countries, there's clearly an issue of character, qualifications,
and prejudice.
Training. I don't know exactly. Yeah, and
prejudice is the foundation for all forms of discrimination, including sexism, misogyny, racism, and the list goes on. So if you have not dealt with your prejudice within an institution, it will manifest in racism. That's a fact. That's a fact.
A, you're talking over.
That's a fact.
I'm making a good point. But secondly, you're bringing in prejudice, bigotry, racism, none of which had anything to do with this particular incident.
What are you talking about? I just explained to you internal racism, which is based off of prejudice.
It had nothing to do with why these
thugs killed this man. And I said it should be considered.
I
said it should be considered.
Well, let Zuby finish the point you were making.
Okay, even following on from that point, I'd also say this is mind reading as well. So even trying to bring racism into this conversation, let's say these guys did not have guns and badges. Let's say this was just a group of random thugs, 5 black men beating up another black man. Even in that situation, even outside the police force, I've still seen situations where people try to blame this somehow on this specter of white supremacy. And as I've said, frankly, it's embarrassing.
And
as a black person, I have just as much agency and accountability. Okay. As I said, black people have full responsibility and accountability, just like it would be ridiculous to see a video of white people beating up a white man. There are videos out there of white police beating up white people.
Well, I would also make the point.
Have you seen loads of videos of
well, I would also, look, if I could just, on that point, I would make, well, I would also, look, if I could just, on that point, I would make, on that point, I would make, I would also make the point that if people genuinely believed it was racism, then given these scenes were as horrific as the George Floyd killing, in my view, no better, no worse. I mean, this went on for a much longer period and was disgusting and abhorrent to watch. Completely innocent guy just getting beaten and then he died. Given that, if it was racism that people genuinely believe was the motivation, we would see the same scenes on the streets of cities all over America that we saw after George Floyd's death. We would see the riots. We would see burning cities. We would see that kind of intensity of reaction. But the truth is, even the people claiming this is about racism and white supremacy, they don't believe it. Because if they did believe that, if they did believe that, they'd be out on the streets saying it. And they're not.
They are saying it. They are saying it because they do believe it.
But they're not protesting in the same way because in their heart they know it's not racism.
Okay, so I agree with you in that. I've always said that. I don't subscribe to any type of hypocrisy, right? So if white people are going to kill black people, we should be outraged. If black people kill black people, we should be outraged. So therefore, there are many things that Zuby have said that I agree with. There are many things that you have said that I agree with. But what I'm also trying to say is that, firstly, this is about abuse of power and a disregard of of life. Those individuals should make sure that they are accountable for
we can all agree on that.
That is clear. But we also need to take into account that black people internalise racism and they can perpetuate that racism within institutions. That is a fact.
Yeah, I'll tell you what is a fact. This was 5 black police officers killing a black man, not because of racism and white supremacy or because anything a white person had done, but because they actually didn't know how to do their jobs. It got completely out of control. They behaved like a mob, a frenzied mob,
just like
and they completely lost control.
Because they're thugs as well. When white police beat up black people, they're also thugs as well. Because black people aren't just thugs when they beat up black people.
Yeah, I didn't say
white people can also be perceived as thugs when they beat up black people. Let's just be clear on your language.
Iman, you can keep saying whatever you want. This had nothing to do with racism or white supremacy. And as Zuby rightly says,
black thugs, though, didn't you?
I actually think it's
embarrassing.
Black
thugs, though, didn't you?
They were black thugs.
Okay, but you don't call white people black thugs when they kill black people.
Can I say one more thing here,
I call white people white. I call white thugs white thugs.
You don't.
Of course I do.
There is far more emphasis on black people. There is far more emphasis. This is the reality of media. There is more emphasis.
Can I jump in here?
Final word to Zuby.
Connotations like thugs.
Final word to Zuby.
Can I?
This whole neo-Marxist anti-racism thing always comes unraveled at some point. And you notice that these people don't see human beings as individuals. They see them as black, they see them as white, they see them as gay, they see them as straight. The most important thing about the individual is their group, whereas normal human beings see people as individuals, and their skin color or their gender or their sexuality is just simply one of millions of factors that synthesizes who they are as an individual. And we judge situations and people off of merit, off of character, off of their actions, rather than the face value of what group you belong to. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is a mind virus. And that is the main reason that I have this page. It's the main reason that I make these videos, is so that I can keep you guys armed and dangerous when somebody comes at you with this implicit bias bullshit, or with this you're a racist and you don't even know about it bullshit, or with this white privilege or white guilt bullshit. Anyways, let's finish the video off.
Yeah, can I jump in here? Yeah. I think that in all of in both the US and in the UK, when we can have these conversations without the words white and black even being brought into the picture, then I think we'll be making some good headway.
So you're offering colourblind, which is irrational.
I totally agree. And actually,
colourblind is
I actually completely agree with that.
And I'm quite disappointed that you said that as a black man.
If we purely talked about the police brutality here in that context without mentioning skin colour,
we won't get anywhere.
We would actually get somewhere to trying to help the situation. But by making it about race where it doesn't exist, we actually cause more problems than we're already there. Iman, thank you. Zuby, appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much.
Zuby is an absolute G. And guys, this is the difference between a victim mentality and a victor's mentality. Zuby is a guy who's gone out and got it in life. He's a guy who's never ever made excuses, never ever said, oh, I can't be where I want to be because I'm black. And there's a reason why he's so unbelievably popular. He's got 1 million followers on Twitter. He's been on Joe Rogan, all of the biggest podcasts, because he's an interesting man. He's lived all around the world and he has personal value. Whereas Iman, as much as I gave her props, she has a victim mentality. She's actually a successful person, a model, an actress. She's doing really well in life, but it's just unfortunate that she has to see everything through the lens of group identity. But respect to her for actually going on Piers Morgan and discussing it and having the debate, which is what a lot of leftists do not want to do because they know that their ideas just won't win out. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you would like access to uncensored, exclusive content and to join the Rattlesnake TV community and support the channel so that I can bring the best content possible to you as often as possible, then please consider hitting the link in the bio, rattlesnaketv.locals.com, and support the channel. And if you want to watch another clip, click right here. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, if you get value from these videos, then click right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV.